All right, so it's no secret that given the Bulls' current direction by going a little younger, prioritizing development of their youth, although you could fool me that that's actually the case sometimes based on some of the rotations we've seen thus far, but because of this new direction, it's pretty clear that Nikola Vucevic is not going to be part of the Bulls' long-term plans, given he just turned 34 and only has 2 more years left on his contract. So while I know a few Bulls fans don't like it, especially because Vuce has been playing some of his best basketball since coming to Chicago, I feel most of us are in agreement that it would be in the Bulls' best interest to trade Vucevic, especially because he might actually have some value now in the trade market, whereas last season and this offseason, it was non-existent. And so because I recently did a video on some of the mock trade scenarios for Zach Lavine, some of you had asked to do the same thing on Vucevic, and that's what we'll be covering in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, I'll be honest, going into this season, I thought there was no chance the Bulls were going to be able to trade Vucevic unless they were willing to give up assets to move on from him by attaching, say, a first-round pick with his contract, which we know the Bulls weren't going to do. And so I thought it was likely the Bulls were probably going to be stuck with Vucevic at a minimum for the entirety of this season, if not for the rest of his contract, which expires the following year. But given the way Vucevic has been showing up and looking like his former all-star self from his days back in Orlando, shooting the ball incredibly well, finishing around the basket significantly better, much better footwork in the paint, I would even say improved court vision, Vuce has been thriving in this new offensive system that has the Bulls playing fast and spreading the floor. And so while I don't think Vucevic's value is going to get you some kind of insane haul of a deal, I do think that he can get you something to work with, and I do think there will be some teams interested in his services come the deadline to add a scoring, floor spacing big man to a contending team. Now, before I started this exercise, I thought to myself, well, this will actually be much easier to find a trade partner for Vucevic than Zach Lavine because he's making so much less. It's easier to make the money work. And while yes, that is true because we're mainly looking at teams that are in a position to win a title or a fringe title team, and because most of those teams though are actually over the luxury tax or in some cases, some over the aprons, you either can't aggregate players in a trade where you can make it a 1-for-2 or 2-for-3 type deal, or the team the Bulls would trade with can't take in more money than they can send out. It just really limits options you can put together for a trade package. And then the other thing I grapple with in going through these was, what is Vuce's actual trade value? Because yes, it's obviously going to be better based on the way he's been playing compared to last season, but it's not going to be a situation in which the Bulls are going to get multiple first-round picks and or young players in exchange for him. At the end of the day, he's still 34 years old, is probably going to taper off and decline in the next 2 to 3 years. And no team is going to be willing to give up valuable future assets for him. So with that in mind, here's what I came up with, and I would love to hear what you guys think of it as well. Now, of course, the first team that comes to mind in terms of a viable trade option for Vucevic is the LA Lakers. And to be clear, there are very few teams where a trade for Vuce could actually work. A contending team that is in win-now mode that is actually looking for a starting center. There's not a lot of them. Not a backup center, but a starting center. There are not a lot of teams that are in search for that right now. And because it was recently reported that the Lakers are in search of a big man, a center with their limited options they currently have. And so in this first trade, it's going to include D'Angelo Russell, yes, I know, but I'll explain, Jalen Hood-Schifino, and 2 second-round picks. What you need to be focused on here are the second-round picks. I wanted to include one of the Lakers' first-round picks, but I just really don't think that's realistic for Vucevic at this point. But getting 2 seconds for a player that you know isn't going to be part of your long-term plans is a solid return. The reason for including D'Lo here, well, one, he's not a terrible player. He doesn't make sense for the Bulls with their current roster being loaded with guards as well as the overall timeline they have in place. The main benefit is the expiring contract. You get the money off your books, the $20 million that you owe Vucevic next year for more cap flexibility. The reason JHS is included here is because the Lakers, given they're an apron team, cannot take back more salary than they're sending out. So you have to add more salary to make the trade work. And JHS, while I don't think he has a future in the NBA, he is a younger prospect that fits a little more along the lines of what the Bulls are trying to do. Now, I did another one with the Lakers just to see how some of these other options could work. This is essentially the same trade, but flipping Rui Hachimura out for D'Angelo Russell. This one I feel makes a little more sense for the Bulls, but the Lakers could probably be a little more unwilling to do that as they value Hachimura as a greater trade asset. Hachimura, obviously younger than D'Angelo Russell, fits more of a position of need for the Bulls to give them some more front court depth, especially if they're losing Vucevic in this instance. I think the only downside here is if you're the Bulls, is you're not really freeing up any cap space for the long term by bringing in Hachimura since he's still under contract for next season and is making about the same as Vucevic. But unlike Vuce, He's younger, would fit the Bulls' timeline and direction. You could re-sign him if things go well, and honestly, with all the injuries to Patrick Williams, all those concerns right now, it might be good to have a backup option at the 4 if you're the Bulls. And then I've also got this trade with the Warriors, which is a little wonky because it includes so many players, but like the Lakers, it's necessary given the Warriors, again, are an apron team and are not able to take in more salary than they send out. So in this instance, again, the value is in the second round picks, and you're getting expiring deals in return, but also expiring deals that could help you to an extent for this season. Gary Payton, Bulls could use his tenacity and defensive effort in guarding the perimeter. Bulls can always use help on the defensive end this season. Bulls likely wouldn't re-sign him given his age, and so you free up the money on your books that you would otherwise owe to Vucevic. Kevon Looney, I'm not really sure what happened with Looney because he was solid for the Warriors in that championship run, but has been in and out of the rotation for them in recent years. That could be a situation where on a new team, new environment, maybe he thrives. It would also help the Bulls too, considering they're going to need a 5 with Vucevic getting shipped out. It's also an expiring deal, so you won't have to re-sign him and you can let him walk in free agency. And then Lindy Waters, I'll be honest, I don't really know much about this guy. All I know is he's a decent shooter and is on the younger side. Could be a good fit for the Bulls. If not, well, expiring contract and you don't re-sign him in the summer. The value again in all of these are the second round picks. If you can get a couple of second round picks and some potential pieces you could work with or expiring deals to free up cap space going into this offseason, then that's a pretty big win for the Bulls. Now, maybe Vooch could fetch a first round pick. Maybe some team, say the Lakers, they could be a little too aggressive in shipping out a first Vooch. I don't really see it unless it's becoming like a bidding war for Vooch where teams are fighting for him, then maybe, but I don't think Vooch's value is that high. I also looked at other teams like the Suns, the Bucks, the Knicks, but honestly, with all those teams being over the tax line and some over the aprons, it was very challenging to make the money work or have it be a realistic trade that actually would make sense for both sides. Like I said, I realized in going through this exercise, it's actually much harder to get a deal done for Vucevic with all the constraints in place, much harder than it looks. But I would love to know what you guys think and what do you think would be some good, viable trade options for Nikola Vucevic. Let me know in the comments, guys. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.